Hey, welcome back to the Mining Pod. On today's show, we're joined by Storm Rudd of the Oklahoma Bitcoin Association to go through the new Oklahoma Bitcoin bill that just passed last week. We brought in Storm to talk about why he spent so many unpaid hours working on this bill, what he wants it to be for Oklahoma, and then also what he wants this bill to be for other states in the U.S. He thinks this could be a model for how Bitcoin and legislators work together. Thank you to Storm for making this show possible. Before we get into the show, we want to thank Foreman Mining and CleanSpark for being the lead sponsors for the Mining Pod. We'll hear more from both these sponsors in just a little bit. Okay, let's dive right into the show. Hey listeners, let's talk about revolutionizing your mining operation with Foreman. This isn't your average management tool. It's an all-in-one solution for reducing costs and significantly boosting your revenue. Foreman brings a cutting-edge dashboard to your fingertips, empowering you with automated energy strategies. This means not only curtailing around real-time prices, but also strategically enhancing your profit margins through demand response. It's about leveraging energy efficiency to its fullest potential. With Foreman, you get a system that scales with your business, inventory management for assets, infrastructure integration, and business intelligence. Foreman elevates the cash flow and production of your entire operation. To see how Foreman can redefine your mining operation standards, visit foreman.mn. With Foreman, you're not just managing a mining operation, you're setting a new standard in the industry.
Accelerated by Compass is the premier accelerator program for Bitcoin mining sites at any stage of development. Our managed services provide expert guidance in site procurement, construction, energy agreements, and mining operations. Compass helps clients meet timelines and expectations for operational excellence, from greenfield to retrofits and everything in between. Don't just mine, excel. Visit compassmining.io now to discover how Accelerated by Compass can power your success.
Are you a retail or institutional investor interested in Bitcoin mining companies? The Miner Mag brings you free data and analysis from all major NASDAQ-listed Bitcoin mining operations to know who stands out. Check out visualized metrics and data-dependent stories at theminermag.com.
Welcome back to the Mining Pod. I'm Charlie Spears with Blockspace Media. Yes, you heard this is Charlie Spears opening the Mining Pod. I've got my co-founder of Blockspace, Will Foxley, who's usually the guy who opens the Mining Pod. But I'm here because I get to bring in a very interesting guest. This is Storm Rund, who Storm is hot off a very successful kind of news event, which has made the rounds this week, where we here in Oklahoma, Storm and I both live in Oklahoma, have gotten some legislation passed. So I'm going to help guide the conversation here. But first of all, Storm, welcome to the Mining Pod. How are you doing?
It's a pleasure to be here. I love the Mining Pod. Very excited for the opportunity to be on here today. So thanks for having me on, guys.
Strong intro, Charlie. Look at that.
Yeah.
Very proud of you.
Well, one of my thoughts is everybody, whenever they think of states in the United States, which are passing legislation and have an active role towards Bitcoin and Bitcoin mining, they usually think of Texas. Some people think of Oklahoma, maybe some Wyoming or Tennessee and Kentucky, but we want to add Oklahoma to this short list. And Storm and I have been co-laboring on this, but really Storm has taken the banner and led the charge. Storm, can you give me some background on yourself and what the Oklahoma Bitcoin Association actually is? Catch us up to speed here.
So quick background on myself. Born and raised in Oklahoma. I went to law school in New York. I was hooked on privacy, cybersecurity, data protection issues while I was there. I had a good friend from high school who, all the way back in 2014, 2015, was trying to get me to, even read an article or anything about Bitcoin. And I just called him an idiot and that he didn't know what he was talking about. And, the classic, too smart by half. And eventually, while I was in law school, 2019, I kind of tangentially got interested in Bitcoin again. And then when 2020 rolled around, I had more time than ever on my hands while we were in remote learning. So I decided to actually take my business partner, Kaz, my now business partner, Kaz, up on his offer to actually learn something about Bitcoin. Like so many other people, I caught the brain virus, and then I was hopelessly lost to this space ever since. So I sort of pivoted my legal education to just studying anything that could even potentially relate to Bitcoin. I started a small mining firm. I moved back to Oklahoma. And then we have also now, Charlie had sort of got in touch with me And we got the opportunity to start what is now a 501c6 nonprofit trade association. Charlie's on our board. We're the Oklahoma Bitcoin Association. And what we focus on is getting out in the community, whether it's universities, whether it's policymakers, whether it's just general community members, by hosting meetups in Oklahoma City and Tulsa. We are just really trying to spread the word about Bitcoin, show people that this is a lot of fun. It's really, really interesting to come learn about this topic because it touches on so many different things. We have a robust energy industry in Oklahoma and a very rapidly growing mining industry as well. I'll give the listeners the fun fact that we like to share. And that's by the end of the year, the Bitcoin mining industry in Oklahoma is going to be the largest industrial consumer of electricity by sector, passing the oil and gas industry. So that is something that we open up with our elected officials, and they're completely shocked to hear that. But we do live in Texas's shadow. It's a familiar location for us to be in many different respects. But we're happy that people are sort of taking notice of what we're doing up here.
Can I ask for some unfair numbers really quick? So Texas has like 80, 85 gigawatts of generation, kind of depending on where you're at during the year. And they say that like Bitcoin mining is probably like 1 to 2 gigawatts of that at this point, maybe a little higher.
Mm-hmm.
What's it for Oklahoma? Do you know like overall generation for the state?
Yeah,
and do you know what Bitcoin's
I forgot what the overall generation figure is, so I'm not even going to try to guess. But as far as Bitcoin mining goes, we're getting close to 1 gigawatt. We have another 200 megawatt site coming on here in the next couple months. And I think that's going to scale out to be 700 megawatt site eventually. We've got one in the middle of Oklahoma City that's about 180 megawatts, and I think they're going to be adding another 70 to 80 megawatts here pretty soon. And then there's all sorts of 50 to 100 megawatt sites that are littered throughout the state. I think Charlie has about 7 of them. No, I'm just messing around.
No, it's funny because like this is a 501c6, the Oklahoma Bitcoin Association, which is fairly new. I mean, it was incorporated a few years ago, kind of sat in stasis. Storm picked that up from the guy who originally incorporated it and really like drove forward, putting together a board, executives, directors, and hitting the ground running with some legislation. I think this has like been the news story of the week, I think, in like regulation that's not negative.
Yeah.
Because it's funny, like a lot of people think, oh man, like Oklahoma may have like in response to all these like privacy and coin join and like issues and like and uncertainty at the federal level, like, oh, Oklahoma comes in with the response to that. But no, this has like been a year in the works that we arrived to the governor signing the first House bill. Can you explain to me what this House bill is, Storm, and just the process? I feel like we could talk about the process a lot.
We could talk about the process a lot. I think probably starting with a little bit of legislative history is helpful, and then we can sort of maybe get into what the bill actually does, so people sort of understand what this looks like. Basic civics education 101 is that you get a bill introduced either in the House or the Senate. You find bill authors in both houses. This bill is a House bill, so it originated in the House. And you go through committee. It has to get voted out of committee. It goes onto the House floor, gets voted on by the House floor. If it passes, it goes to the Senate, and then does the exact same thing. Committee, floor, and then once you've passed both houses of Congress, then it'll go to the governor for signature. Now, from a advocacy standpoint, every single one of those processes requires you talking to certain gatekeepers who are committee heads, who are floor leaders, who decide which bills are being heard when, if your bill is going to be heard at all, and what you need to do, what amendments need to be checked off. Have you talked to this executive agency that is outside of Congress, that's in the executive branch, and had everybody look at your bill and sort of sign off on it? It is not as simple as just introducing a bill. You get a lot of press releases about, bills being introduced, but, we could go, anybody can really get a bill introduced. You just have to find a bill author. actually getting it to move through the process and sitting down with legislators long enough for them to understand what it is that this bill does and being willing to put a yes vote next to their name on it is a much bigger endeavor. So this bill specifically, we probably spent about 2 days a week at the Capitol since January. And it would just be probably going into legislators' office and just explaining to them all of their concerns about Bitcoin. And it ranged from people who knew quite a bit to some representatives asking me where we dig the Bitcoins out of. I'm not kidding. I got that question. So I think one of the biggest things is just being able to meet these legislators where they're at. Everybody has questions, and we're in a fortunate enough position where we get to show up and we get to talk about this thing that we all love with our elected officials. And I think showing grace and patience and being willing to explain these things is sort of what's the type of authenticity that's going to carry a bill across the finish line. So that's some of the process. Do you guys want to sort of dive into just the bill itself?
Yeah. What does the bill actually do? We've said it a bunch. What does it do?
Yeah. So the main provisions of the bill stipulate that the state of Oklahoma shall not pass a law in the future that's going to abrogate the right for Oklahomans to self-custody their Bitcoin, to start a mining business, to run a node, and then we have a lot of other regulations on the side that are specifically about mining businesses. So one thing you're seeing is a complete opposite approach is, I think in Illinois, but I know in Arkansas, you have bills that are being introduced that put specific sound decibel limits onto mining operations. They implement permitting regimes. They put a lot of onerous compliance burdens onto mining businesses. And basically what this bill does is saying that will not be tolerated. Oklahoma will not pass laws that specifically target the mining industry as opposed to general data centers. There are some other provisions in there. Money service businesses and money transmitter licenses have been hot topics. And there's obviously federal and state regimes for money transmitter licenses. But what this says is we're going to provide regulatory clarity that running a node and engaging in mining, whether you're a commercial level miner or a home miner, these are not things that fall under the purview of money service businesses, and therefore you will not have to ever have a money transmitter license. So the practical effect of these bills, I think the big one is it shows other states that it's okay to enshrine these things into state law. A lot of people, you see sort of comments from the peanut gallery sometimes saying, well, we already have the rights to do these things. But actually getting a bill into state where you codify these things is a big deal as far as preempting future regulatory attack surfaces. And not just in Oklahoma, but when you have a state that's willing to step out and be first in codifying these rights, other states will follow suit. And then if we get, let's say, Louisiana and Ohio and Montana and Arkansas and a lot of other states follow suit in passing legislation like this, then when the federal government maybe down the road looks at passing a law that would in some way, shape, or form abrogate the right to self-custody and make it hard for people to own their own Bitcoin, they have to now all of a sudden look at this coalition of states that has laws that are opposed to what that federal regime would be. And they have to put it in their risk-reward calculus of, well, what if these states get together and file suit for us? There's a lot of legal resources that are going to be tied up. Is that worth it? And, of course, we live in a democratic federalist system. It's really important for the states to flex their muscles and show that they're more than willing to step in and speak to these issues.
In the competitive world of Bitcoin mining, one name stands out: CleanSpark, America's Bitcoin miner. At CleanSpark, efficiency isn't just a goal, it's our standard. Our sophisticated facilities are built and led by expert teams who care about Bitcoin and the communities we work in. Scale, we've mastered it. Our large-scale operations have set us apart in the industry as examples of community-oriented building. Our track record speaks for itself. We navigate the complexities of the new economy with precision and with skill, continuously achieving operational milestones. Curious about how we do it? We invite you to discover the story behind CleanSpark's success at cleanspark.com.
I think one interesting thing is, I as a Bitcoiner, you as a Bitcoiner, we like to celebrate and push that this enshrines things about Bitcoin. This is a victory for Bitcoin. But one thing that I've really liked about your attitude and what we at the Oklahoma Bitcoin Association have, the kind of angle we've taken, is that the language of this particular bill does not apply to just Bitcoin. It applies to all digital assets. And I think that's a very interesting strategic angle. Can you talk to me about how we think about this? Because the OBA, we want to educate about Bitcoin. We have our Vice President Kaz as a professor doing classes on Bitcoin at the university level. But when it comes to legislation, we have, I would consider a very pragmatic approach. Can you talk to me about this?
From the realpolitik level, I mean, you're not going to get right now. I mean, we were told straight up, you're not going to get a bill on the House floor that is only talking about Bitcoin specifically. And a lot of that has to do with legislators don't want to run the risk of the state making a state-approved cryptocurrency. That is the language. But whether or not that's the case, I think really the approach is that we want to put ourselves in a position where we have a strong foundation for future advocacy efforts. We don't know what that's going to look like in the future. Whether or not this is about Bitcoin or any other digital asset in the future, we just don't know how this space is going to develop 5 years from now. And especially when we're looking at regulation like this, a foundational piece of legislation that is setting key definitions, that's another huge part about what this bill does. Is when we're talking to the Corporation Commission, we're talking to the Banking Commission, we're talking to the Securities Commission, we have now a law on the books that speaks to these things. So when we're trying to advocate for corporate membership, when we're trying to advocate for the rights of our community and the rights of our citizens, we want to be able to have all of the things that could potentially that exist now and may exist in the future encompassed into this foundational piece of legislation. So I think that's really what it does, is it covers our bases. The entire language of we have digital assets on Bitcoin now. So I think it's important for us to have language that is going to function, especially if it comes to a court level. If all of a sudden now we get attorneys involved and we have judges involved and they need to understand these things, we need to have definitions that are going to hold up actually in a courtroom. So I think that is really the approach that we've taken.
What are the next two bills that are being looked at? And then I want to tie this back to Bitcoin mining a little more specifically after that.
So the other two bills, there's one, and we aren't sure. Session is almost up. Oklahoma has a very rigid budget fight going on between the House and Senate right now. We are waiting to see sort of how that's going to unfold. But one of them is an incentive program for miners to participate in demand response programs. And what that would look like is, so if miners register for demand response programs at the Southwest Power Pool level, which is where the interconnect that Oklahoma's grid system is tied into, or with the utility companies like OG&E and PSO, that they will then get a sales tax exemption on the price of electricity and their equipment as well. That bill has passed the House, so it has actually been voted on the House floor. And it has passed and is now sitting in Senate committee. We're going to see if we can get a vehicle into the budget discussions, but we just don't know yet. And then the third one are UCC amendments that have passed in multiple other states at this point. I think that one is not moving ahead as well, just because we were particularly focused on House Bill 3594. But we're going to be looking at that bill more in the future for future legislative sessions.
Love it. And then so for the bill that just passed, maybe some thoughts on the other two that you just referenced, what are some practical things Bitcoin miners could think about? Even if you kind of like touched on them lightly, it'd be interesting to hear like more practicalities around these things.
Yeah. So as far as House Bill 3594 goes, I mean, look, we're in a position now at this point where look at miners in New York. I mean, there have been regulations in New York that have even though New York has abundantly cheap energy, a lot of hydroelectric power in New York. There is a regulatory risk and regulatory cost that you have to consider when you're evaluating New York as a jurisdiction to deploy a Bitcoin mine. When you're now going to be looking at Arkansas, there are about 5 bills introduced, and again, keep in mind the distinction I made between a bill being introduced and actually moving through the legislative process. That would have been de facto bans on Bitcoin mining. I think they put like 40 decibel sound limits. They put bans on you can't use Chinese manufactured ASICs. So I mean, all of these things like in practice end up being a ban on Bitcoin mining. But yeah, I mean, all these things are something that you have to consider. So now when a miner is considering Oklahoma, they know we have a strong trade association that has a proven track record of moving legislation through the legislature. We are able to have conversations with the Oklahoma Corporation Commission that regulates the public utilities. We have great connections inside the state capitol at this point. We've built out the social layer infrastructure to have a predictable and consistent regulatory environment in Oklahoma. And you're only going to see that become more and more and more important over the coming years. I really hope that we see other states take the same course of action. But you know, like I said, this is a federalist system. We're going to see a lot of different approaches from a lot of different states, and I'm confident that over time, you know, what we've been able to accomplish here in Oklahoma is going to be more and more demand for Bitcoin miners going ahead. And who doesn't like a sales tax exemption on the price of electricity? That would be a very practical consideration for Bitcoin miners.
So, you know, I've had a window in. I've been a part of these conversations, Storm. I think it's no small. It cannot be overstated enough that you've just worked the beat for the past several months on this. And you know, I look into like how you've operated, and you've got a team. We've got a couple other people. We've got Micah Burge, a really sharp utility guy. You've got some great directors on the OBA side. But like, you know, we see Bitcoin mining becoming a major industry across the nation, and in some capacities, like in Oklahoma, like the number 1 or top 5 largest industrial consumers of power. But it doesn't seem like we have, you know, it's a tall order to ask legislators to understand this new industry, but I don't think it's that crazy to like ask for regulatory clarity and for like defensive legislation, especially because our industry is so misunderstood. Why do we not see this type of legislation happening across all states? Like it's 2024, and we're only just seeing the first state really like explicitly enshrine the right to run a node. Like, I think I know the answer because I've had to watch from the inside this whole time. But like, you know, maybe describe me like a lot of the barriers and pitfalls and where you've managed to navigate through those.
I'll say first, and this is absolutely no shade or anything. This is just a comment on the limitations as they exist when you're doing state level advocacy work. There's only so much federal organizations can do, or national level organizations. When you mentioned, Charlie, like I had to hit the beat for this. And when I say I had to hit the beat, like I said, I was in the Capitol for 2 days a week since January. You have to meet with people from all over your state, from both sides of the aisle, people that you're going to agree with. You need a team of people, and it's not just me that was going in there. I mean, we have, like you mentioned, Micah Burge, yourself, Kaz Biko, Jack Pennebaker. We had wonderful bill authors. Everything about this is a social level endeavor. It is so important to have the people on the ground that are passionate about this and are willing and able to go explain this simply, eloquently to the people that are only going to have 5 minutes, maybe 10 minutes to consider what this legislation is going to do. There are national level narratives, especially from one side of the aisle, that are not exactly conducive to what we want to build with Bitcoin mining. I think a lot of that is misunderstood, and you have great work from guys like Troy Cross and Daniel Batten who are able to articulate the reasons why the Bitcoin mining environmental narrative is a lot more nuanced and interesting than just Bitcoin mining used a lot of energy, therefore bad. But again, it just requires locals, people who are from the state, who these state representatives and senators are going to talk to, because these are just normal people that live in our communities. It's not Elizabeth Warren and whatever other Republican senator in your state capital. These are members of your community that really value people who live where they do, who shop where they do, whose kids go to school where they do, theirs do. And you have to really get to know them, and they have to know that you're there for the right reasons. So it's a call to decentralization, frankly, that again, federalism is a decentralized system. And if we want to see more of this regulation pass in more states, we have to find the leadership. If we want to get this bill passed in Louisiana, we need Louisianans to lead this. If we want to get it passed in Montana, we need Montanans to lead this. And yeah, I mean, that's sort of what I think. We've been able to talk with Oregon to make OBA V2 and to get a Bitcoin association to try to get our model to start scaling out to more states. And that's something I would call on, businesses who are looking to say, well, I don't operate in Oklahoma, but I'm really interested in what they're doing. I still think there's a very good case for those businesses to consider membership in the Oklahoma Bitcoin Association, because you should want to see this succeed. You should want to see a good laboratory where a strong trade association that can build out the model and set the example for other states. Because the more of this grassroots support that happens at the state level, the much more we're insulating ourselves from regulatory tax services at the federal level moving forward. So I encourage you to reach out to me if you're a company and you're interested in supporting what we're building here.
Need ASIC help? Check out Vitamine, one of Bitmain's certified repair shops located in Washington State with satellite offices in Colorado, Oklahoma, and Texas. PSUs, hashboards, immersion setups, in and out of warranty repair, Vitamine has you covered. Want to train your technicians? Bring Vitamine to your site for hands-on training in the art of ASIC repair, complete with Bitmain AMTC certification. Contact Vitamine today at dan@vmasic.com. Again, that's dan@vmasic.com. When you think of ASIC repair, think Vitamine.
You mentioned both sides of the aisle. I think this is kind of interesting because, for context, Oklahoma is the reddest state in the union.
Utah.
Oh, really? I didn't.
Utah now.
Okay. Well, we were at some point.
Blue wave to Oklahoma. Here we go.
Yeah. But like,
Colorado firsthand, man.
Yeah. But I mean, we had folks on both sides of the aisle, literally. I mean, at dinner together, talking through this legislation. Can you talk me through, like, given that there's not that many Democrats in Oklahoma, you still managed to kind of win over. We managed like a swath of senators and representatives. You talk to me about that.
Yeah, it was heartwarming. I mean, being able to go out to dinner with a lot of legislators and seeing people on both sides of the aisle that are clearly like dear friends was really, really cool. And especially in a very one-party dominated state like Oklahoma, where the Democrats that are representing certain districts in the House and Senate still have really fantastic working relationships with these people, and again, know each other's kids. It's really cool because we're all sort of brainwashed into this vision of Washington where things are so sort of collegial, and there's a lot of animosity between different sides of the aisle. But when you go to your state level, I mean, there may be rivalries, but it's cool that these people get to spend so much time together and they respect one another, and they all are looking for good ideas. And they care about the state. So that sort of shared vision is really wonderful to see. And I'm confident it's that way in your state as well. But yeah, so I mean, as far as our efforts go in House Bill 3594, we got broad bipartisan support, very broad bipartisan support. In the House, this bill passed, I think, 80 something to 1. And then in the Senate, it was about 36 to 4. And again, both sides of the aisle, I think it's just a testament to good policy and good legislation is easy to sell, and it's easy for these representatives and senators to support. And being able to articulate your position and being able to meet a senator where it's at and being able to frame the legislation into the items and topics that they care about is probably the most important skill when you're doing state level advocacy work. So we were able to do that effectively, and I'm just proud of our team for being able to get that across the finish line.
It's interesting because whenever there's, we see a lot of like national news articles, Wall Street Journal or New York Times or whatever publishes some kind of piece on Bitcoin mining. It makes the national news, and it's usually a thorn in the side of our industry. But I want to localize and zero down on one little vignette that I remember maybe about a month or so ago when you sent the Oklahoma Bitcoin Association members and like our team discussion that you'd found that someone had been handing out flyers against this, and it was kind of the same kind of stuff we always hear. Where did that come from? Like, how did you respond to that?
For context, I walk into our Senate bill author's office one day, and he has a flyer on his desk that's talking about how House Bill 3594 is a tax giveaway to industries. It's going to remove the ability for municipalities to set noise ordinances for industry, so on and so forth. It was basically every provision in our bill on opposite day. This was a policy bill with no tax impact. There's a provision in there that specifically states municipal or Bitcoin mining businesses will have to comply with local noise ordinances. So it's just total misinformation. There, of course, the person who was distributing these did not sign them. We found out later that someone had hired some old lady to go pass these out to everyone on the Senate Business and Commerce Committee. And we never found out who was behind it. So it's really interesting that you have, a vignette is a great little example because, we were running around, we made a counter one pager and, handed out to everybody that received one, and it didn't end up doing any damage, but it's funny. It's a funny story just to sort of exemplify, even at this level in the halls of the state capital of Oklahoma, there is someone out there who just really hates Bitcoin and wants to see it fail. But it warmed my heart to see them fail. So
it's the ETH Foundation taking to the streets, taking to the Capitol Hills.
Yeah, it really did seem like the Nick Carter's like FUD dice, if it were a little document or something.
That's so accurate.
Yeah. Storm, I want to wrap this up a bit, but I do want to, for those people, for the future Storm runs out there who are listening to this, what are like the resonant talking points? One of the things I talk about a lot, having been in Bitcoin a long time and failed to explain it to people, failed to give a compelling case. You got to go in often and just introduce this idea cold to people. What are some of the beats that you hammer in, and what do you obfuscate and hand wave away, and what are the things that you find are like very successful to communicate the whys of why we need to pass this legislation and whys of Bitcoin in general?
I think one of them is the recognition in almost everyone's office I go into has a recognition that this isn't going away. We're there. So any given representative in the Oklahoma State Capitol, when the Oklahoma Bitcoin Association comes in to talk to them, they recognize that this is something that is happening. It's not just close my ears and shut my eyes and this is just going to go away on its own. They recognize that, we probably need to do something. I will say one of the most powerful things that we're able to do and the beats we're able to hit on is we show up. Frankly, that is the most powerful thing that you can do is you show up. We have a great community of people in Oklahoma that are willing to email their reps and senators. And these people go from none of my constituents care about this to, oh, we have a trade association. I got an email from one of my constituents this morning. I should know something about this. And then when they have a trusted source of information, they have somebody that's willing to, I will lovingly call myself a suit. Somebody who's willing to put a suit on and show up and answer their questions and meet them where they're at and tell them why we don't dig Bitcoins out of the ground, why it's more like auditing transactions and putting it in terms that they can understand in the 10 to 15 minutes that you have to talk to them. And when they ask questions, telling them that they are good questions. Those are all things that are really important. As far as specific beats that are huge to hit on, it's economic development. It's Bitcoin miners as energy infrastructure, which I firmly believe is what the future of Bitcoin mining looks like, is integrating itself as pieces of energy infrastructure. It's capitalizing on wasted resources via oil and gas, like our friend Charlie Spears is able to do with his company Nakamoto. And it is just bringing in all of the very smart, industrious, entrepreneurial people that define the Bitcoin space into Oklahoma and recognizing that these are people that we want here. Oklahoma, it is built into our DNA that we make do with what we have. We don't have luscious beaches or, massive cities like New York or LA. We have always been able to make a lot out of a little. And that is just a sense of state pride and identity that, again, if you're not a local, you're just not going to understand these things. And you know how to speak those languages. So for the future storm runs in the world, when you're building out your own Bitcoin associations, know what it is that these legislators care about. Know what it is that makes your state unique, and be able to articulate what makes Bitcoin special and what makes the people who are interacting in the space really resonate with the identity of your state.
So where does the Oklahoma Bitcoin Association, where does Oklahoma go from here for Bitcoin mining in particular? This is a mining show. Like, what does mining look like in Oklahoma over the next 5 years?
I think we're going to be pushing really hard to get the miners' demand response incentives. We're probably going to call it something like the Miners Grid Stability Act or something like that. We're going to be working really hard to get that passed into law. I think that's going to be a great template for other states moving forward. And one of the biggest things I put on my Twitter yesterday after we put the announcement out is energy companies, open source developers, software companies. What do we want to accomplish? Because we can do it here. What does it make sense to have a state at the state level policy try to enact? We are open to ideas. We are open to collaborations. One thing that I personally really care about is the Open Source Justice Foundation. I know Aaron Daniel runs that. I think there are really cool policy bills that we could think up together and have Oklahoma be a leader and show other states that we can do this. Because this is the model, right? You get one state to pass something at the state level, and then other states will follow suit. So what are these things that we want to accomplish? Come to Oklahoma, come to our meetups, come talk with us. Just reach out online, and we can make this into a really great laboratory that embraces the principles of federalism and is a place where we can pass good legislation, actually get it through the halls of the legislator, and create a beacon and a model for other states moving forward.
That is a line. Storm, can you give me some call to actions for the Oklahoma Bitcoin Association? I mean, I'll say it, we're in dire need of members. Pay dues paying members.
Yeah, we need members. If you happen to be with a large publicly traded or just large company with a lot of revenue, you should want to see us succeed. Reach out to us. If you don't want to be a public-facing member, we're more than willing to accept donations as well. If you have ideas, if you believe in this vision of state-level advocacy, please, we would love for you guys to sponsor things. We would love to highlight what you're doing. Reach out to us at hello@oklahomabitcoin.org. DM me on Twitter. I'm _BTC Storm. Go to our website, check out our membership page. We have all of our meetup dates on the website too. That's oklahomabitcoin.org. We would be happy to accommodate anything. We'd love to brainstorm. So many ideas that we can accomplish. If you want to get involved with our universities, Kaz Baiko is going to be a professor of Bitcoin, a full-blown full undergrad and graduate class at the University of Oklahoma. There's so many things we can do with trade schools. If you run a repair center, The possibilities are endless. If you are running a business in this space, let us know.
Yeah, we take. I'll also take up the call to action. We take national and domestic members, so you don't have to live in Oklahoma to support the OBA. Any final thoughts, Storm?
I think that's it. Thank you guys so much for having me on. Again, I love the mining pod. I think this is a great audience that will appreciate what it is that we're trying to build here. If you're mining Bitcoin, keep hashing. I know we're in dark days right now, but I just saw the price. We're at 66K. We're gonna be good. We're gonna keep swimming here. Charlie told me he's about to do some crazy new ordinal mints or whatever, and we're all gonna be safe by rims.
Man, I'm trying. I'm trying to. We're attacking this. So
Save us.
thanks for listening to the Mining Pod. Go subscribe to other Blockspace Media stuff. Blockspace.media is the website. Hit our newsletter. Visit our other shows. Maybe you're just into mining, but check out mine. I produce Bitcoin Season 2. New topics and new faces about the new conversations happening on Bitcoin. And the Gwart Show. Gwart travels all across crypto asking questions about the what's, whys, and why does this all exist? So thank you so much. Catch you all next week.